When we usually talk about medical tourism, the image that instantly comes to mind is someone flying off for a discounted dental implant.
Right, or like a quick cosmetic procedure or something.
Exactly. But we're starting today's deep dive by painting a very different, much more intimate picture. Imagine a woman named Layla.
Okay.
So Layla lives in Lebanon, and to everyone in her circle, she is just vibrant. She's like the life of the party, always hosting dinners, always the one holding everything together.
Yeah, the strong one.
Right. But behind closed doors, she is carrying this incredibly heavy, totally invisible burden. 3 consecutive miscarriages.
Oh, wow. That's devastating.
It really is. I mean, 3 times she saw that positive pregnancy test, felt that overwhelming rush of planning a future, and then just had it replaced by absolute crushing heartbreak.
Yeah.
And her local doctors in Beirut, who were, highly compassionate and deeply wanted to help, were essentially just looking at a medical mystery. They offered her a lot of sympathy, but 0 actionable answers.
Which is arguably the most isolating place a patient can be.
Mm-hmm.
When the local medical community looks at you and says, we simply don't know why this keeps happening. I mean, the psychological toll becomes immense.
Right, you're just stuck.
Exactly. You are left entirely in the dark, questioning your own biology with no clear path forward. It's like this specific kind of medical purgatory.
But Layla's story doesn't end in that purgatory, because the solution to her most intimate heartbreak wasn't going to be found in her home country at all.
No, it wasn't.
It was waiting for her inside a highly regulated, ultra-high-tech laboratory across international borders in the United Arab Emirates.
Which is such a fascinating shift.
It is. That realization that the answer to this profound biological mystery was literally just a flight away. That's the entire foundation of what we're unpacking today. We have this fascinating stack of sources in front of us. We've got patient testimonials, medical travel guides, clinical data, and the central mission for this deep dive is to understand why thousands of people are migrating across the globe to the UAE for the most complex, emotionally high-stakes medical journey of their lives.
Yeah, because it represents a massive tectonic shift in global healthcare.
Totally.
To truly understand why this migration is happening, we have to look entirely past the luxury resorts and the towering skyscrapers of Dubai or Abu Dhabi. We have to peer directly into the microscopic world of the UAE's embryology labs.
Right.
But we also have to look closely at the digital infrastructure, like the facilitators making this kind of international care accessible in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack that digital infrastructure first, actually, because nobody just wakes up, blindly throws a dart at a map, and books a flight for a highly sensitive medical procedure.
No, definitely not.
Our sources keep pointing to medical travel facilitators like PlacidWay. And the best way to visualize what these platforms do is to think of them as the Airbnb of global healthcare.
That's a great analogy.
Right. Because if you're planning a complex vacation, you don't call 50 different international property owners and hope they speak your language.
Yo, you'd go crazy.
Exactly. You go to a single centralized marketplace. You research destinations, you compare facilities side by side, read verified reviews, connect directly with the hosts.
Right.
PlacidWay functions on that exact same logic, but for life-altering medical treatments. It lets you evaluate clinic success rates, check their tech capabilities, and literally message specialists directly. It puts the patient completely in the driver's seat.
And the contrast between the old way of seeking care abroad and this platform model is just stark.
I get it, man.
In the past, medical travel was basically a leap of faith into the unknown. But today, when patients use these platforms to look specifically at the UAE, what they're discovering is a level of technological sophistication that frequently surpasses what's available at the leading clinics in their own local zip codes.
Which is wild to think about.
It really is. And going back to Layla's story, the definitive turning point was a specific technological breakthrough called pre-implantation genetic testing for aneuploidies.
Or just PGT-A for short, right?
Exactly. PGT-A. Most people just call it that.
I want to break down exactly how PGT-A works, because reading through the clinical data, the sheer scale of the microscopic engineering sounds like straight-up science fiction.
Oh, it really does.
How does this testing actually solve the mystery of recurrent miscarriages for someone like Layla?
Well, the precision of the procedure is what changes the entire landscape of reproductive medicine here. When Layla underwent in vitro fertilization IVF in the UAE, the embryologists cultured her embryos in the lab until they reached what is known as the blastocyst stage.
Okay, and when does that usually happen?
This typically happens around day 5 or day 6 of cellular development.
Mhm.
And by this specific stage, the embryo has naturally differentiated into 2 distinct parts.
Right.
You have the inner cell mass, which is the part that will eventually develop into the fetus. And then you have an outer layer of cells called the trophectoderm, which goes on to form the placenta.
Okay, so the embryologists are looking at this microscopic, incredibly fragile sphere of cells. How do they test it without destroying it?
That's the science fiction part. They utilize incredibly advanced laser-assisted microscopes.
Wait, lasers?
Yeah, lasers. With pinpoint accuracy, the embryologist uses a microscopic laser to safely extract just a few cells from that outer layer, the trophectoderm.
Okay.
So the inner embryo, the actual future baby, remains completely untouched and secure.
Wow.
And once they have those extracted outer cells, they run them through a sophisticated process called next-generation sequencing, or NGS.
And the goal of that sequencing is to map out the chromosomes, right? Because chromosomal abnormalities are the hidden culprit behind, like, the vast majority of early pregnancy losses.
Precisely. They are looking for exactly 46 chromosomes. If an embryo has an extra chromosome or is missing one entirely, it dramatically increases the likelihood of a condition like Down syndrome or, very frequently, it just results in a miscarriage.
Which is what was happening to Layla.
Exactly. The NGS technology spots those chromosomal errors with over 99% accuracy. So for a patient like Layla, the paradigm completely shifted.
Instead of just guessing.
Right. Instead of transferring a visually good-looking embryo and just hoping for the best, the medical team could objectively identify the exact embryos that were chromosomally perfect prior to the transfer.
That is incredible.
That laser precision screening is how she finally broke the cycle of loss and carried a healthy baby to term.
It's a phenomenal medical triumph. It really is. But I have to admit, I'm looking at some of these claims in the sources about the lab environments themselves, and I'm highly skeptical.
Yeah. Oh, really? What part?
Well, it mentions continuous time-lapse monitoring and AI grading embryos. Come on, are they actually using artificial intelligence to grade human embryos, or is this just marketing buzz masking a fancy camera?
I know, it sounds like pure marketing, but the application of AI in these specific labs is very real, and it actually solves a massive fundamental problem in traditional IVF.
Okay, what's the problem?
Well, in a standard laboratory setting, to check if an embryo is developing properly, an embryologist has to physically open the incubator, remove the Petri dish, and place it under an external microscope.
Right.
But every single time that door opens, the embryo is exposed to microscopic changes in temperature, humidity, air quality. It causes cellular stress.
Oh, I haven't thought of that.
Yeah, so the top-tier clinics in the UAE have replaced that entirely with continuous time-lapse incubators.
Wait, so it's basically like having a high-tech time-lapse camera permanently mounted inside a greenhouse? Like, you can watch a rare, incredibly fragile seed grow from the outside, meaning you never have to open the door and accidentally let a draft of cold air ruin the climate.
What's fascinating here is that that is the perfect way to visualize it. The incubator remains completely sealed, maintaining a strict, unbroken environment of exactly 37 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
And inside, the system takes continuous, highly detailed photographs of the embryo's cellular division. The AI software then analyzes that time-lapse footage in real time.
So the AI is doing the heavy lifting.
Exactly. It objectively maps the specific timing of every single cell division to grade which embryo has the highest biological potential for implantation. By eliminating the need to physically handle the embryos, they reduce handling stress by roughly 90%.
That is huge. And the obsessiveness over the environment doesn't stop at the incubators either. The sources detail these massive investments in clean room technology, specifically heavy-duty HEPA and carbon filtration systems for the entire laboratory.
Right, because the air quality is just as critical as the temperature. Those filters are designed to eliminate volatile organic compounds, or VOCs.
Which are what exactly?
Yeah.
Just like dust particles.
Well, dust is caught by the HEPA filters, but VOCs are much more insidious.
Okay.
They are microscopic, airborne chemical gases emitted by everyday items. We're talking cleaning supplies, construction materials, even the perfume someone might be wearing in the hallway.
Wait, really? Perfume?
Yeah, to an adult human that are completely harmless. But to a microscopic developing embryo, they are highly toxic and can halt development entirely.
That's terrifying.
It is. So the clinics in the UAE invest millions specifically to scrub these VOCs from the environment, ensuring the air inside the embryology lab is as pristine as scientifically possible.
Okay, so we have established this absolute pinnacle of reproductive technology. You have laser biopsies, AI time-lapse analysis, and multi-million-dollar clean rooms scrubbing the air of invisible toxins.
Yep.
But having the most advanced lab in the world doesn't mean anything if the front doors are locked.
Right.
And for a long time, the UAE's legal framework kept those doors firmly shut to a massive portion of the global population. This is where the landscape becomes an incredible paradox. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
It's highly progressive on one hand, opening doors for certain people, but on the other hand, it's an absolute regulatory walled garden.
Yeah, the legal framework is essentially the invisible hand guiding all of this medical tourism.
Right.
Historically, the UAE mandated that any patient seeking fertility treatment had to present a legal marriage certificate. But a seismic shift occurred with the implementation of Federal Decree Law number 17 of 2023.
Okay, what did that do?
This legislation was a progressive milestone that completely reshaped patient access. It officially permitted unmarried non-Muslim couples to undergo advanced fertility therapies like IVF without needing to be legally married.
Wow.
Yeah. The new requirement simply asks for a joint written declaration verifying the parentage of the child.
That one legal shift must have just opened the floodgates for international patients who might be in long-term committed partnerships but simply don't have a marriage license.
Oh, absolutely.
And importantly, it also fundamentally changed the rules for single women, allowing them to freeze their eggs electively. Like, they no longer need a documented medical justification, like a cancer diagnosis, to preserve their fertility.
And that elective preservation policy alone caused a massive surge in medical travel. But the walled garden aspect you mentioned is equally defining here.
Right, the restrictions.
Exactly. Under federal law, the paradox is that all third-party reproduction is strictly and entirely banned.
Meaning?
There are absolutely no donor eggs allowed. There is no donor sperm. Gestational surrogacy is strictly prohibited. Every single patient must use their own biological genetic material.
And that stems from the underlying cultural and religious framework, right?
Yes, exactly. The UAE's legal codes are heavily influenced by Islamic principles, which place a profound emphasis on preserving clear, unambiguous biological family lineage.
So if a couple has, say, exhausted their own biological options and absolutely requires a donor egg to conceive, the UAE is simply off the table.
Completely off the table.
They would need to pivot, maybe using a platform like PlacidWay to locate a highly rated clinic in a country where third-party reproduction is legally protected.
Exactly.
But for the patients who are using their own biology, this strict ban actually works to their advantage in a strange way.
How so?
Because the UAE clinics cannot rely on young, highly fertile donor eggs to pad their success rates.
Yeah.
Right? They've been forced to become absolute world leaders in maximizing the quality and outcomes of complex self-cycle IVF cases.
Oh, absolutely. It creates a crucible for excellence. When you can only work with the genetics the patient brings to the table, your lab technology and your protocols just have to be flawless.
And within that legal framework, we also have to highlight a major driver of this international migration, family balancing, which is commonly known as gender selection. It is perfectly legal in the UAE, and it draws thousands of couples every year. The story of Ahmed and Fatima perfectly illustrates the emotional pull of this option.
Yeah, Ahmed and Fatima traveled to the UAE from Saudi Arabia, and they represent a very different demographic from patients struggling with infertility.
Their story is so universally relatable, honestly. They already had a loud, chaotic, wonderful house full of 3 energetic little boys. They adored their sons.
Naturally.
But Fatima had this deep, persistent longing to experience raising a daughter. She wanted that specific mother-daughter bond. And Ahmed saw how much this meant to her. They didn't have a medical inability to get pregnant. They had a profound desire to balance their family dynamic.
And because the PGT-A genetic screening we detailed earlier maps out all 46 chromosomes to check for abnormalities, it naturally and inherently identifies the sex chromosomes as well.
Right, it's just part of the map.
Exactly. The embryologist can clearly see if an embryo is XX or XY. So when Ahmed and Fatima went to a clinic in Abu Dhabi, the team safely screened their embryos, verified which ones were genetically healthy, and identified the female embryos.
Wow.
They transferred a single healthy female embryo, and today they have their baby girl. The technology gave them total agency over their family's future.
It's an incredible level of control. But, navigating the legality of family balancing and the brilliance of AI incubators is only half the battle.
Right.
Once you know you're legally cleared and the tech exists, the immediate crashing reality for any patient is always the cost.
Always.
So what does this all mean? You're telling me I could fly across the world, stay in a service apartment for 3 weeks, get laser-assisted embryo biopsy, and it still costs less than the clinic in my own zip code?
It sounds impossible, but yes.
Because looking at the financials in these sources, the contrast is staggering. A standard IVF cycle in the U.S. easily hits $30,000 once you include the genetic testing. But the clinics in Dubai and Abu Dhabi are doing the exact same hyper-advanced protocol for a fraction of that. We're talking $6,000 to $12,000. How are they achieving that kind of price point without secretly cutting corners on safety or hiring underqualified staff?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally natural to assume that cheaper means lower quality, but the data completely refutes that.
Okay.
The physicians in these UAE clinics are frequently board certified in the US, the UK, or Germany. They've simply relocated.
So why is it so much cheaper?
The massive price disparity comes down entirely to macroeconomics and the structure of the healthcare systems themselves. The UAE has intentionally established specialized healthcare economic zones.
What does that actually mean for the hospital's bottom line?
Well, it means they operate with, plus they don't have to deal with the crazy high medical malpractice insurance premiums that absolutely paralyze the U.S. healthcare system. In the U.S., clinics have to charge exorbitant fees just to cover their own liability insurance. In the UAE, that financial burden is lifted, allowing clinics to reinvest their capital into securing the multi-million-dollar AI labs while keeping the direct cost to the consumer incredibly low.
So even when a patient factors in premium international flights and booking a service department for 3 weeks, they are consistently saving 40% to 60% on their overall journey.
Exact.
Plus, the UAE has one of the highest concentrations of Joint Commission International, or JCI, accredited hospitals in the world,
Right.
meaning independent global safety auditors are constantly verifying their standards. But let's keep this completely transparent for the listener. A base package of $6,000 to $12,000 is incredible. But what are the hidden costs? What is the clinic not including in that advertised price?
That's a great question because transparency is critical for anyone planning medical travel. The most significant out-of-pocket expense that is rarely included in a base package is the cost of the hormonal stimulation medications.
Why are those excluded?
Because every single woman's ovarian reserve and biological response is uniquely different. One patient might need a very mild dose of stimulation hormones, while an older patient might require maximum dosages for a longer duration to produce viable eggs.
Oh, got it.
Because the pharmacy protocols are so highly customized, clinics can't realistically bundle them into a flat fee. Patients need to budget an additional $1,500 to $3,000 specifically for those daily injection medications.
Good to know. Are there any other hidden fees to watch out for?
Patients should also account for the UAE's 5% value-added tax. And additionally, there are always separate, mandatory fees for pre-treatment infectious disease screenings.
Like what?
Like comprehensive HIV and hepatitis panels, which must be conducted locally at the clinic before they allow any genetic material into their clean rooms.
So the financials make sense, the tech is elite, the laws are clear. But how does a human being actually endure this?
Yeah, that's the real question.
Right. If you're listening to this and considering medical travel, the sheer logistics of moving your life across the world for a medical procedure are daunting. What does the physical and psychological journey actually entail?
Well, it is a marathon, both physically and emotionally. If a patient is undergoing a fresh IVF cycle, the physical timeline requires them to be on the ground in the UAE for roughly 18 to 21 days.
3 weeks in a hotel or an apartment, I mean, that is a massive disruption to daily life.
It's a significant commitment. The medical cycle begins right at the start of the menstrual cycle. And for the next 10 to 12 days, the patient is actively undergoing ovarian stimulation.
Okay.
They are administering heavy hormone injections daily. They must commute to the clinic every 2 to 3 days for invasive transvaginal ultrasounds and blood draws, just so the doctors can meticulously monitor how the follicles are responding.
And once the doctors determine the eggs are mature and ready,
the patient is given a precise trigger shot to finalize the maturation process. Exactly 36 hours later, they are put under light anesthesia, and the egg retrieval procedure is performed.
But here's where the timeline gets incredibly complicated for patients utilizing PGT-A genetic testing, like Layla or Ahmed and Fatima. You don't just sit in a hotel room in Dubai waiting for the lab results, because next-generation sequencing takes weeks.
Correct. This introduces the psychological hurdle of the freeze-all strategy. Because the genetic lab needs substantial time to sequence the DNA from those tiny biopsies, the embryos cannot be transferred immediately. They must be frozen.
Right.
And the clinics achieve this using a cutting-edge technique called vitrification.
I found the mechanics of vitrification fascinating in the sources.
Oh.
Older freezing methods used to be incredibly risky for embryos, right?
Historically, yes. Older, slower freezing methods were dangerous because they allowed microscopic ice crystals to form inside the water-dense cells of the embryo.
And ice crystals act like tiny microscopic knives. They expand and physically rupture the cell walls from the inside out.
Precisely the danger. Vitrification solves this entirely. It is a flash freezing technology that drops the temperature so violently and rapidly that the liquid inside the cells bypasses the crystallization phase entirely and instantly turns into a smooth, glass-like state.
Right.
Yeah, because absolutely no ice crystals form, the structural integrity of the embryo is perfectly preserved. The survival rate of an embryo upon thawing is nearly 99%.
So the embryos are safely vitrified, literally suspended in time.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the patient is recovering from the physical trauma of the egg retrieval. They pack up, fly thousands of miles back to their home country empty-handed, and step into this excruciating psychological waiting period.
Yeah.
They just had to wait for an email from a lab across the world to tell them if any of their embryos are genetically normal.
The wait is often described as the hardest part, but once they finally receive that genetic report and identify a healthy embryo, the logistics become much simpler.
Okay.
They return to the UAE a month or two later for a frozen embryo transfer, or FET. This second trip is a fraction of the time, usually just a few days.
Oh, that's much easier.
Exactly. Plus, medical data shows that the frozen embryo transfer is often superior because it gives the woman's body a month to completely flesh out the massive doses of stimulation hormones. Her uterus returns to a natural, highly receptive state, which actually increases the odds of successful implantation.
But this entire multi-trip, high-stakes marathon raises a massive underlying question for you, the listener. How do you vet a medical team from 5,000 miles away?
Right.
Choosing a fertility doctor is one of the most vulnerable decisions a person can make. Doing it based on a website. It's like high-stakes online dating, but for the most important medical decision of your entire life. How does a patient actually establish trust before wiring thousands of dollars and boarding a flight?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is exactly why the modern medical tourism industry has aggressively prioritized what we call the virtual handshake.
Okay.
Platforms like PlacidWay don't just hand you a directory of phone numbers and leave you to fend for yourself. They facilitate deep, comprehensive virtual consultations.
So the patient is having a face-to-face video call directly with the reproductive endocrinologist who will be performing the surgery.
Exactly. Long before a single dollar is spent on airfare, the patient is sitting in the comfort of their own living room, looking their future doctor in the eye through a screen.
That helps a lot.
It does. They securely share their local medical records, discuss the exact customized medical protocol, and, most importantly, ask the hard, uncomfortable questions about hidden costs and realistic success rates.
Right.
This allows the patient to gauge the doctor's bedside manner. Does this physician genuinely listen to my concerns? Are they explaining the science in a way I understand? The foundational trust is established virtually.
And the physical handoff once they arrive is just as choreographed, right? Because the sources point out that these premium clinics have dedicated international patient lounges.
Yes, they do.
You aren't just left to navigate a foreign hospital alone. You are assigned a personal liaison who speaks your native language, coordinates your local transportation, and acts as a direct bridge to your OBGYN back home.
Which is crucial.
Right, because once that frozen embryo transfer is successful and you fly home pregnant, your local doctor has to seamlessly take over the prenatal care. It is this highly coordinated global relay race.
Yeah, and looking at the entirety of this ecosystem, it becomes very clear that the UAE has completely transcended its old reputation. It is no longer just a destination for luxury shopping or business layovers.
Not at all.
Through relentless, strict safety oversight from entities like the Dubai Health Authority and the Department of Health in Abu Dhabi, its bold integration of AI morphokinetics and its surprisingly transparent cost structures, it has forged itself into a legitimate medical sanctuary.
Right.
It provides a highly engineered haven for patients who felt powerless or priced out of their local medical systems, giving them a tangible way to regain control over their reproductive futures.
Absolutely. And whether you are navigating the heavy emotional toll of unexplained infertility like Layla, proactively looking into elective egg freezing to preserve your future options, or if you are simply fascinated by the shifting economics of global healthcare, the core takeaway from all these sources is empowerment.
Yes.
Geographical borders simply no longer have to dictate or limit the quality of your medical care. Tools like PlacidWay exist to completely demystify the process, putting the ultimate power of choice squarely back in your hands.
When patients understand that these ultra-advanced, heavily regulated global options exist safely and affordably, the entire landscape of healthcare consumerism changes permanently.
Which leaves us with a profound final thought for you to mull over on your own. If medical borders are rapidly dissolving, if patients like Layla can simply bypass their local limitations, fly away and find better, cheaper, and faster high-tech care to solve their most intimate medical mysteries, how is that going to force our own local healthcare systems to evolve?
It's a huge question.
If our local hospitals don't adapt, radically lower their administrative costs, and embrace this kind of transparent, patient-first technology to compete with these rising global medical hubs, do they risk becoming completely obsolete? Something to think about. Until next time.